Hi there music fans and welcome to another one of my top 10s, another poll, and today I thought I'd give you my top 10 favourite album tracks by The Shadows. Yeah, a couple of days ago I gave you my top 10 favourite singles by The Shadows, so I thought today I'd give you my favourite album tracks. And yeah, just to go through everything The Shadows ever recorded would, I think, and just do a top 10, I think would be absolutely impossible if you just count the singles, the B-sides, the the album tracks, the EP tracks, the stuff that they put onto Cliff albums as well. It would take some doing. So today I'm just going to stick to the album tracks by The Shadows and give you my top 10. So without further ado, here's my top 10. So number 10, I have Dakota, which came from Out of the Shadows. And the reason why I have Dakota here in my top 10 is I just thought I'd have to have a Brian Licorice Locking song in it because I was so lucky back in 2014 I got to perform with Brian in Dublin. He came over to Dublin and he did a gig in Malahide in Dublin, and I got to sing all the Cliff stuff with him, and I got to do some Eddie Cochran stuff and some Gene Vincent stuff and Marty Wilde, because Licorice played with all these artists. So I got to do a full set of rock and roll stuff with him, and it was probably one of the greatest nights of my life anyway, to actually be on stage with Licorice Locking. And he's a great loss to music, and I miss him as well as a person as well. He's just an absolutely fantastic person. And yeah, like I've always loved the track Dakota, but I think since being on stage with Locking and seeing him actually perform this track that night was unbelievable. He done it absolutely perfect. He just pulled a Monica out of his pocket and just played it absolutely perfect, just like the single back in or the album track back from, I think, 1962. Shadows fan can correct me. I think the Out of the Shadows came out in 1962. If I'm wrong, correct me. Anyway, so number 10, Dakota. Number 9, I have Semi-Detached Suburban Mr. James, which comes from the album Jigsaw. And it's probably the most up-to-date track on this album. I'm not sure what year that album came out. Was it 66 or 67? And that's probably the most up-to-date one, because I absolutely love all the early stuff by The Shadows in particular. So everything else is just early stuff by The Shadows. But I always loved this track. One of the first cassettes I had of The Shadows was actually a cassette, but that was one of the first albums, and it was called An Hour with The Shadows, and this track was featured on it, and I just thought it was an instrumental, and that's it. Absolutely loved it. It was one of my favourite tracks on that album. And then I realised years later, I found out that it's a cover of a song by Manfred Mann. And but I still don't really care for the vocal, the actual song. I still just love the actual instrumental The Shadows did of Semi-Detached Suburban Mr. James. Absolutely love it. Number 8 is from The Sound of The Shadows, and it's called Brazil. Absolutely love this track. It's the opening to the album, and as I mentioned a few times on this YouTube channel as well, I love looking at set lists of particularly Cliff and The Shadows set lists throughout the years, and I noticed that they used to open up shows back in the early 60s, 63, 64 I think. They used to open shows with this track as well, so they must have really liked it as well. Absolutely love Brazil, just a great track. Number 7 is from Dance with The Shadows, and it's called Fandango. Absolutely love it. Fandango. Absolutely love it. Just a great track, great fun track. Absolutely love it. Number 6 is the first one I have of 3 tracks that come from the debut album, which I think is their greatest album. And at number 6 I have Gonzalez. Absolutely fantastic track. Always loved the track. I was shocked that they actually performed it on the final tour back in 2004. Absolutely fantastic. What a great surprise that was. What a great treat to get this gem from the first album, Gonzalez. Absolutely love it. At number 5 now, I have from Dance with The Shadows also, I have In the Mood. Absolutely love it. The Glenn Miller classic. Absolutely love this track. Yeah, I think they used to do used to perform this a lot live around that time as well. About 64, 65, I think they were performing this one live as well. A good bit. Absolutely loved the track. In the Mood. Number 4, I have a track from a soundtrack of one of the movies they appeared with Cliff, and the movie was Summer Holiday, and this track is called Round and Round, and I absolutely love this track. I've always loved the track. It's one of my favourite Shadows tracks of all time. Round and Round, absolutely love it, so I couldn't leave that out of my top 10. Number 3 comes from the Shadows debut album again, and it's Nivaram. Of course, Marvin spelled backwards. Nivaram, absolutely love it. Yeah, I love hearing any version of it, really. All the bass players throughout the Shadows careers had to master the little bass solo in the middle, but I still rate Jet Harris's fantastic bass solo in the middle as the best, simply the best. Nivaram, absolutely love it. So that's number 3. Number 2 comes from another Cliff and the Shadows movie soundtracks, and this one comes from Wonderful Life, and it's called Walking. And I don't know whether, again, like Genie and the Light Brown Lamp in the last top 10 I had, I don't know whether a lot of Shadows fans would have this one rated so highly, but I absolutely still love this track, and this is just my personal choices. So I have that one at number 2 because I absolutely love it. I love in particular, I love Brian's drums on it as well. I think it really highlights his drum skills on that track as well. Absolutely love it. So number 1, I don't think it's going to be that big a surprise because it's just an absolute classic track. And number 1 is from the debut album, The Shadows, and it's Sleepwalk. What a classic track. A cover of the Santos and just like you can tell me down the bottom. Yeah, I love the original as well. Rock and roll classic. First time I ever heard it was featured in I think it was the original version was featured in the movie La Bamba, and I loved it. And then I heard the Shadows version, which I like even more. I love the Shadows playing Sleepwalk, and they obviously do as well because they performed it quite a bit through their career. So that's my top 10. I'll just run through them really quick again. Dakota, Semi-Detached Suburban Mr. James, Brazil, Fandango, Gonzalez, In the Mood, Round and Round, Nivaram, Walking, and Sleepwalk is number 1. So that's my top 10. As I say, I'll probably do another top 10 of B-sides because it had some amount of fantastic B-sides. The Breeze and I comes to mind. The Miracle comes to mind. There's a couple of other ones. Just absolutely fantastic B-sides they've had. Sometimes even better than the A-sides in my opinion. And EP tracks as well can't get left out as well because it had some amount of fantastic EP tracks as well. So there's going to be definitely another couple of these top 10s coming up pretty soon. But that's my top 10 favorite Shadows albums track.